As you get off at by the Nugget, you'll see the old railroad building. That's not long for this. Here's some pictures of what it looked like in its heyday, around 1904, and then in 1944 when the Erector building was built, but the machine shop was built in 1903, opened in 1904. And some of these pictures are showing what it looked like before. And sadly, when these video was taken, that we're going to see here in a few minutes, was taken in January of 2024. It had been scheduled for demolition. Union Pacific Railroad wanted to take it over and turn it into a parking lot.
It's a shame all the windows got broken out, but then you come in here, oh my gosh.
So we'll take a little tour on the inside. When I was over here looking at this, I got lucky and the inside back door was open. So I availed myself of that to come in and take a few pictures and some video of what it looked like. As you can see, the roof definitely needed to be rebuilt, but the frame and the walls were in good enough shape that they could have been rebuilt if someone had stepped forward to turn it into a historical monument or a venue with concerts and other things, turn it into shops. But no one stepped forward, so Union Pacific, who wanted the room, knocking this down as future videos as we move along here in about 7 or 8 minutes in. There'll be video showing the demolition, which was occurring at the end of February, by the 5th of March of 2025. It's going to be all knocked down so that they can make a parking lot for additional trucks and trailers. Some history on these buildings. The Southern Pacific Railroad erecting shop, which is still standing, but they're quickly demolishing it. That construction began in November of 1943. It was necessitated by the purchase of 120 new articulated locomotives since August of 1939. Plus, the Sacramento shops were not able to handle as speedily as needed all the repair work to the heaviest locomotives operating in this division. Sparks Erecting Shop had a 200-ton traveling crane installed. It was exceeded by no other cranes in the world. The gigantic new electric crane traveled overhead in a building 250 feet long, 90 feet wide, and 70 feet high. Here's what it looks
was
like.
By 6 hot air blowers. A 15-ton crane in the same building handled smaller parts of the locomotives.
It's in pretty good shape on the outside. I was able to snap some pictures on the inside. The very back area is open, but the Reno Evening Gazette, March 31st, 1944, stated approximately 274 additional permanent employees are needed for the new shop in Sparks, Nevada. The erecting shop's construction was necessitated by the purchase of 120 new articulated locomotives since August 1939. Plus, the Sacramento shops were not able to handle as speedily as necessary all the repair work to the heaviest locomotives operating in this division. Sparks Erecting Shop had a 200-ton traveling crane installed. It was exceeded by no other cranes in the world. The railroad estimated that use of their new erecting shop would save so much repair time during 1944 that if the shop could be fully staffed with workers, 42,000 locomotive miles would be added to the railroad in 1 year. This would be of tremendous importance in handling war traffic. It would also be a boom to the economy that carried over into the post-war era. The gigantic new electric crane traveled overhead in a building 250 feet long, 90 feet wide, and 70 feet high. It was warmed by 6 hot air blowers. A 15-ton crane in the same building handled smaller parts of the locomotives. The former locomotive shop was converted into a machine shop. The old transfer table was rebuilt to handle the larger motive power that was to be serviced there. Sparks, Nevada was Southern Pacific Railroad Company's key maintenance facility. It was in the Southern Pacific yard that trains changed their crews, that the cab forward locomotives operating over the Sierra gave way to the lighter engines for easier haul eastward, that passenger and freight trains were inspected and serviced, that the Streamliner City of San Francisco was refueled and its running gears serviced, livestock was unloaded for rest and feed, that long trains of refrigerator cars were iced, and locomotives and cars were shopped for repairs.
That's all that's left of it.
And the machine shop was a brick structure, 150 feet wide and 500 feet long. History of one of the oldest buildings in the city of Sparks just came down. It was demolished a couple days ago. It was the machine shop building at 599 Nugget Avenue in Sparks, used to repair trains. It was considered the pinnacle of Sparks history and the city's oldest building in its original location. While the machine shop was over 500 feet long, the erecting shop was built adjacent to the machine shop. It stood at 120 feet wide, 450 feet long, and was in use from 1944 to 1956. During this time, there were huge locomotive hoists. These hoists were of great size and power with incredible strength and were installed high above the floor of the building. Their function was to lift the massive locomotive engines above the floor so the wheels could be changed or repaired. Sadly, Union Pacific Railroad has decided to demolish the building and make it into a parking lot where they will park trucks. City of Sparks and historians have been trying to get it saved, but they failed, and the building has been is in the process of being demolished, and that's what some of these videos will show. I also have at the end of the video how it looked a year ago before they started demolishing it. It was called the Sparks Back Shops, the railroad machine shop. Southern Pacific built the machine shop in 1904 next to the roundhouse. The machine shop housed all the machines and tools necessary to repair locomotives. Any needed part could be produced within a few hours. Right next to the machine shop in 1943, they built what was called the erecting building, which was where they could take the railroad locomotives, lift them up on a 200-ton lift, which was the largest and biggest lift in the world, and remove the wheels and work on the bottom of the trains. The railroad shops. The Southern Pacific Yard at Sparks, Nevada was part of the Salt Lake Division run by the assistant superintendent. Under him, the mechanical department was the master mechanic or general foreman of the shops, along with the roundhouse foreman and the section boss, who was in charge of track maintenance. These men worked under a yard master. Each position worked in their specific departments. The master mechanic was in charge of the machine and erecting shops. Employees under his command were machinists, boiler makers, crane operators, pipe fitters, welders, apprentices, and their helpers. The foreman was in charge of the large engine garage with the help of hoisters, wipers, and helpers. These men kept the fires burning in the boilers and cleaned and fueled the engines for their next run in the roundhouse. The hostler moved the engines out of the roundhouse to the turntable, thence to the ready track where the engine was filled with water, oil, and sand and set out for the head of the next train. The section boss and his crew kept the track in tip-top shape, a very important job considering that million-pound engines were running on these rails. So this was called the Railroad Machine Shop and Erecting Building at 599 Nugget Avenue in Sparks. It was used to repair trains, and it's considered the pinnacle of Sparks history, and it was the city's oldest building in its original location. Said to be the most significant railroad building in Nevada, if not the entire western United States. Built in 1904, it was constructed about 120 years ago and was once used by 2 different train companies. And a little history of the city of Sparks exists today. today because in 1903, Southern Pacific moved all its operations from Wadsworth, Nevada, roughly 30 miles west, and they sold lots on the land in Sparks to employees for $1 if they would relocate. It took steel and 3 million bricks to construct. 1 year later, on July 4th, 1904, the city of Sparks was born. It once housed 11 repair lifts and the largest crane in the world with a 200-ton capacity to lift railroad engines. By 1944, over 1,400 people worked at the site,